don't be shy. We're going to sit closer to the front. And I hope people will forgive me if I sit down, because I've been doing a lot of standing. We've been doing this for a few years now, this Stump the Rabbi session on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, I was sort of, we started a little bit, we took just for the break about, the shiur and, the fasting of this, and just was a little bit, it was just going, because I remember, I've been just, over the break, I've been going through my, the encyclopedias of Jewish humor in the library, about, but the thing is, obviously, the joke is that the people are gorging at restaurants, which is a no-no on a fast day. So that's the humor part of it.
Yes.
So so it's like they're saying to hire agnostic to fast for the person on Yom Kippur and they go to a restaurant, which is obviously the no-no. But then they go like, well, suppose I'm sick. Where are we breaking it and fasting on Yom Kippur? And the Rabbi says, well, it depends on your illness.
So, yes. So that's a whole joke. Yes.
That's a whole joke, yeah.
So just to remind people of the ground rules, I am happy to try and answer every question, but since I don't know the questions in advance and I don't have any way to look things up, if I don't know the answer, I will say I don't know, and I will try and find out the answer after the Chag and get back to you.
Usually with the thing about fasting is you have to, not just because, you can't just do this independently, you have to consult your doctor and your rabbi for Yom Kippur.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas other fast days, it's a little bit more lenient,
Yes.
the answer.
Yes.
But Yom Kippur is very strict. You have to do it with doctors and rabbinical consultation.
Yes. Yes. So there is a variety of opinions going back to the Mishnah. There's argument about what it means to oppress our souls on Yom Kippur. And in the Mishnah, they talk about, okay, if you need to eat or drink a little bit of a something, either because you need the nutrition of the thing itself or because you are taking a medication. They had medication back then.
Right. I mean, obviously, I take blood pressure medication this morning. And
yes.
What I did my thing was I took 2 pills in and then a sip of water just to get it down.
So the rule is you can have what they call a cheek full of water, and you can have an olive-sized bulk of food without compromising the fast. If you are just fasting but you need to have some medication or something like that, that doesn't count as violating the fast. If you are ill, or they also say if you are pregnant or have just given birth, then a lot of the rules of Yom Kippur don't apply to you because your health comes first. So with that, do people have questions?
And then the shiur being that you have to it has to be like less than 30 milliliters of water every 9 minutes or something like that.
Yeah. So that is a loophole that people found based on that sort of Bronze Age cheekful.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Okay. Moving on.
I still try to work.
It's totally okay. It's totally okay.
Well, so I have one, and this is more sort of personal choice. So, among the PUT, is there, on the one, kind of a two-part question, one that particularly resonates with you, and you say, yeah, look, we got to do that. We got to get something from that in. Or on the other side, no, this PUT, I don't know what this guy was thinking.
So the question was of the PU team, presumably of the PU team that we say on the high holidays, are there ones that particularly resonate for me or ones where I'm like, I can't go there, that is not for me? Yes, I mean the thing is also a piyut is a poem. So a piyut, we usually talk about the medieval piyut team, but we also have the modern poetry in the sides. And so like trying to choose between them is just so difficult for me. I think one that particularly appeals to me as an artist and a writer, a creator, is this idea of us as raw material in God's hands that can be shaped or reshaped, and we are asking not to be thrown out as a project that just can't be recovered. One of the things that I found actually in the Zohar when my teacher, Rabbi Eben was taking me through the Zohar was that when we think of ourselves as clay on the potter's wheel, which is that image from the medieval piyut, we should not think of it as each of us individually is clay on the potter's wheel. We all together as a community are that clay. And therefore, any individual person's grit or weakness, the sharp rocks or the mushy bits that make the whole thing fall apart and not be able to balance, throws off everyone else's. And so we think of God as this artisan doing the best that God can with the raw materials, but we're all in it together, and therefore there are going to be times when our neighbors are just driving us crazy because they're making it so hard for God to mold us all into the shape that we need to be. I love that question, though. And there's medieval piyutim that we don't do for the holiday because it just doesn't have anything to do for the holiday. But we've recovered piyutim where people write love letters back and forth with their wives. Like the husband writes a verse and the wife writes a verse, and we have two different sets of handwriting going back and forth. We have piyutim about the beauty of nature. We have piyutim of what we think may be trans women before there was a word for that, trying to express what it is for them to feel gender dysphoria, even though they are of the preferred gender in Judaism. It's extraordinary, the range of emotion and experience that's laid out in those medieval poems. Other thoughts, other questions? Great one.
As far as the Great Aleinu, you said was originally for Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
And so then they started doing Aleinu for every service. But was there also like the similar service on Yom Kippur in the beginning, or did that just become something that like became kind of synonymous with the high holidays in general? Or?
Right. So it's early for me to be stumped.
The question might be bad. I mean,
No, it's a great question. So the question was the Great Aleinu. I had said this was originally just done on Rosh Hashanah. At what point did it spread to Yom Kippur, or was it always part of Yom Kippur before it eventually spread to all of the services? I honestly don't know. I would need to do some investigation. I at least know the person to ask. But yeah, I mean, there is definitely a sense where people come to the high holidays with certain expectations, and it's like, wait, we're not going to do Unatana Tokef yet because it's not yet Yom Kippur. I'm on Rosh Hashanah. I want Unatana Tokef, or like it could be in the other direction. So I don't know at what point it entered the liturgy, at what point that shift was made, but I imagine it was probably pretty early. Yeah, so I will ask my dad because he will know. Our entire attic in our house is wall-to-wall prayer books from every century, every movement, which was the research for the Siddur and the Machzor. What are all of the ways that Jews have prayed before? What are the things that are consistent? What are some of the lost gems? Trying to understand the service so that we can put it together for a new era. Yeah.
Now, I guess this one, I guess it might depend on the synagogue itself or the general community here, but certain U.S. holidays are festive enough that we don't say Tafel. But there are other U.S. federal holidays that are not festive enough that, we do say Tafel. So it was, Juneteenth is festive enough that we do not say Tafel. 4th of July, we don't say Tafel. But I guess Labor Day is probably not it. Is still a Tafel,
So different people have different. So the question was, there is a prayer that we say, Tachanun, a series of prayers actually.
Of course, which we no longer say for the rest of the month because.
Yeah, we're in a joyous month, so we're
so.
putting it aside. But for most of the Jewish calendar, in the regular afternoon service, we have a series of prayers that begins with us falling on our faces and saying, God, I'm in deep distress. Let me fall into your hands, for your compassion is great, but let us not fall into human hands. And you just kind of let yourself fall apart and be a mess. And then at the end, you comfort yourself that things are going to be okay. You put yourself back together and you get up off the floor again. You don't say this prayer on holidays. You don't say it on Rosh Chodesh, you don't say it on the major holidays, and you don't say it, according to some traditions, on particular secular holidays. And the question is, why some secular holidays and not others? Doing it on something like the 4th of July or, the sort of whatever nation you belong to, that sort of national day, is a sign of respect for the country that is currently sheltering you.
Right.
Not doing it on Juneteenth is because Juneteenth celebrates the final full end of slavery after the Civil War. That there were slaveholders who just didn't mention to their slaves that they had actually lost the war and that there was freedom. And Juneteenth was the day when they actually went around and said to all these people, no, you don't have to work here anymore, you are free. And so again, it is this kind of day of real joy and celebration about tyranny being overthrown, which is something we are very much on board with. Other holidays, it's complicated, is Labor Day, which is celebrating our ancestors fighting for workers' rights.
Right.
That is a great day. Is it sacred in the same way that freedom from slavery is sacred?
Memorial Day, it's more of a
It depends.
Days, say respect to the fallen,
Right. So different people choose differently on those days, whether or not that is a day on which they do not do Tachanun. And similarly, if you are engaged in something like a wedding that's taking place or a bar mitzvah that's happening on a weekday instead of on Shabbat, a bris.
Well, that's obvious. You do not say Tachanun in a bar mitzvah,
Right. So that is a really great question. And there's actually a famous story in the Talmud where there was a disagreement between two rabbis who were very in power at the time in Yavne, and they disagreed about what day Yom Kippur was and what day the new moon was. And what then happened is the daughter of one of those people married someone who fell on his face saying Tachanun on a day when her father had said, this is Rosh Chodesh, you don't have to worry about anyone saying Tachanun. And he is so overcome with grief as he's saying Tachanun that the person he's angry at is destroyed. And it turns out to be her own brother who is destroyed. This is like the epilogue to the Avachnai story. But in part this happens because she has a different notion than her husband of what day Rosh Chodesh is. And so it throws off her calculations of when to distract her husband from his grief. So Not a light question. Other thoughts? Please, Lillian.
This is actually a question from somebody else who wasn't able to make it.
Oh, okay.
She was watching a bit of a round table, because I don't know where online she saw this, and one of them quoted, I don't know which Rabbi from way back whenever, that said the only whole heart is a broken heart.
Yeah.
And she just wanted sort of your interpretation of that oxymoron, basically.
Great. Yeah.
Contradiction.
I believe it's the Chafetz Chaim, forgive me if I have that wrong, I can't look things up right now, who said that all of the things we disparage in a sacrificial animal, we honor in a human spirit. That if an animal is injured or broken in different ways, it is not an acceptable sacrifice. But a broken heart, there is nothing so whole as a broken heart, and it is the greatest sacrifice that you can offer. The way I interpret this is that when our hearts have been broken, not in the immediate breaking of them, in that moment you are just hurting, and you are taking care of yourself as best you can. But when you have recovered as much as you can, the fact that your heart has been broken, and for most of us been broken multiple times in different ways, means that you can be compassionate to others in ways that someone who hasn't gone through that thing couldn't be. For instance, if you have suffered a loss and you've been through a painful funeral where the funeral director is so focused on making sure everything runs on time that someone in the family is being made to sit away from the rest of the family because they can't fit in the row, you know that that's going to cause a feud, and you make sure that there's room for that person and that that person is not alone. If someone is, has a diagnosis that is soon to be fatal, if you have lost people, if you have dealt with major health crises, you have a better chance of being able to sit with that person and say, what are you feeling right now? What are you scared of? And just listening. And not trying to fill the silence and not trying to pretend everything will be okay. So in those ways, the broken heart has more strength, the same way that a broken bone heals stronger than before. Beautiful question. Other thoughts, other questions?
This is one more of this whole, just, why do we switch to a Gregorian calendar then? Why is it tied to not to a Hebrew calendar?
Right. A more gentle question. We have two places in the Amidah where we talk about rain. One of them is in the first couple of paragraphs that we generally say aloud, and the second mention is later on in parts that sometimes we say just to ourselves. So the part that we say in the first piece of the Amidah, Mashiv Ruach U'Morid Hagashem, the one who makes the wind blow and the rains fall, we actually have that from the Talmud, that is the prayer that various holy people among Israel would say to make the rains fall when they were late.
I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Something else. It was the December that the one.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
Yeah. But the rule is you don't say a prayer if you don't mean it. And so we only say that prayer from the end of Sukkot until the beginning of Pesach. because when we are actually on a pilgrimage festival and don't have a roof over our heads, we're not actually that enthusiastic if it rains on us. So we're not going to mean it until the festival is over or until before the festival begins. So that piece has a tie to the Hebrew calendar. But there's also a second piece, which is tied to the secular calendar. It usually says, wait until I think December 4th or 5th, and then you can say, and who sends rain and dew as a blessing on the earth, instead of just, and who sends blessing to the earth. And so the reasoning there is, okay, we're gonna start by just saying during the Amidah, hey, thank you, God, you're the one who makes the wind blow and the rain fall, appreciate it. And if God doesn't get the subtle hint that we actually do need rain, then we dial up the volume when we get to what would be the torrential rain season, the monsoon season in Israel. And there we start saying like, no, seriously, we need the rain. So, great question. Other pieces? Other things people are curious about? Got some wide-ranging ones today. It's okay for a quiet crowd. So we're stumping the Gabbis now. We're asking which side does Gabbai Rishon and Gabbai Sheni stand on, and is there a reason why they're on the left or the right?
It's the way I.
Fair enough. You should have the afternoon a little gentler. I honestly don't know what the reason is. My guess, if I had to guess, and I would look and see, I would check it against, there are rules in the Mishnah and Talmud for when someone is teaching, where does the person stand next to them who is broadcasting what they are saying? And so does that impact how the Gabbai Rishon, Gabbai Sheni are positioned to coach the person who is doing the Torah reading? So that's where I'd look first. And then I think I would look at the Shulchan Aruch and maybe the Mishnah Torah, because the Shulchan Aruch is this law code. They get into a lot of precise detail about a lot of things, and so we'll be able to see, like, my guess is that the Shulchan Aruch is going to say in large type, they stand on this side and this side, and, maybe for this reason, and then in tiny print in the Mapa, it's going to say, and in some communities, they reverse it, and that's also fine, or, yeah. Right.
As to which one actually does the correcting, both do it, does one do it more than the other?
So here I can tell you, there are very clear rules in the Shulchan Aruch that you can only have one person correcting, because A, you don't want to throw the person off so that there are multiple people and they're not sure what to pay attention to, but also you don't want to shame the person. And also the Shulchan Aruch gets into what are the corrections that you must make and what are the ones that you can let slide? And that really comes down to is the Torah reading going to be changed in meaning? Like the difference between Ishe and Isha is whether you're sacrificing women on the altar or sacrificial offerings. We don't want to get that one wrong. Although I heard, and I would need to double check this, I heard that even if the person accidentally says curse God, Chilul, rather than Hallel, you let it go. You don't get tangled on that. I would need to check because that feels like a very extreme.
Yeah, I would correct that one very quickly.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, the Shulchan Aruch, I have an 8-volume set, and it gets into very, very dense instructions about every aspect of Jewish life and Jewish ritual. And if you haven't actually gone in and made a study of a particular subject, and sometimes even if you did that, but you did it 10 years ago, good luck remembering all the particulars.
I have a 1-volume summary. That's detailed enough.
Yeah, so starting in the 19th century, maybe the 18th century, they came out with several versions of what's called the Kitzur, the abbreviated Shulchan Aruch, of just kind of, this is the quick reference guide for the things you're most likely to run into, as a way for people to get the basics and then just come to their rabbis for the things where it's like, this is a really particular situation. Someone needs to look this up and give you a tailor-made answer. The difficulty with that is that the Kitzur sometimes takes away possibilities that are in the full Shulchan Aruch. So it says like there is one right way of doing things, which, I mean, for instance, reading the Shulchan Aruch, it says if you're in a community where women wear tefillin, women can wear tefillin. If you're in a community where women don't wear tefillin and this one woman wants to do it, that's ego and she shouldn't. But if there is a community where like everyone has this egalitarian practice, no problem. This is in the 1300s. So then you go to the Kitzur and it says nothing about women wearing tefillin. It just says, and men put on the tefillin looking like this. Yeah. Yeah. Please, Lillian.
This is a question I had actually when I was in college, that I got when I was in college. What is a question you would want somebody to ask, and what is the answer?
Oh, man. What is a question you would want someone to ask, and what is the answer?
That was actually on a final, it was a bonus question on my final.
Ah, okay. I'm curious, what class was that on the final?
Geology.
Geology.
Geology. I had to take a science class, and I was a business major.
Uh-huh.
I did not want to take a science class, especially not one that you had to take a minimum of 2 semesters with lectures and labs and everything. It was like, I have too many of my own mandatory classes than to take an elective that, had that much time. So geology was the only one that was 1 semester, lectures, no lab.
Fabulous. Good reason to take the course. Yeah. There is a science fiction writer named Lois McMaster Bujold, whose father was an acclaimed educator of engineering at a university. And he said that he didn't bother changing his exams from year to year, because even if someone got a copy of the test from last year, the answers will have changed in the meantime. My own sort of what is the question I wish people would ask and what is the answer? What are the things that the rabbis changed in the Talmud while pretending they were keeping things the same? Because once you start going through, you're like, wait a second. This isn't what they said they were doing in the Torah, and this isn't what they said they were doing in the Mishnah. They're making a change, but they're like, no, this is the way that it has always been done. And I love this evidence that we've been part of an organic tradition, that we remain rooted in our past. We never get rid of our past, but what it means, how it's expressed, shifts in different generations, in different cultures, and we're not doing Judaism wrong by doing that. We're just following in our ancestors' footsteps. I think it may have been a particular rabbi. My dad would know the answer to this, but certainly there's a joke about a Hasidic rabbi dies of old age. His son becomes the rabbi. The community's very anxious when he takes office, and says to him, don't make any changes. He says, I promise you, I will do exactly what my father did. Gets up on that first Rosh Hashanah, and everyone's jaws are on the floor because he's making changes left and right. And they come up to him after the service, and they're like, we talked to you about this. He said, yeah, when my father came, he made all sorts of changes. I'm doing what my father did.
That goes into
Be careful what you ask for, indeed. Yeah.
Well, that's putting in mind you taught this when we're doing the leprosy passage, and we talk about the house. And the
Yes.
rabbis say there was never such a house.
Yes. So there is this passage in Talmud Sanhedrin where they are talking about the rebellious child who's put to death, and they say there never has been and never will be a rebellious child. It's never come up. We've never put anyone to death for this. And this one guy's like, no, I sat on his grave. This has definitely happened at least once. And they're like, nope, be quiet, stay over there. And then they say, as long as we're at it, as long as we're creatively reinventing the law, there's also never been a house that has leprosy. We might now think of this as black mold, but like what they describe as leprosy, they're like, we've never seen a case like this, and certainly it's never been put into practice. And so one guy says, no, I saw it, and I saw the notice that was up to the public about it. Be quiet, just stay over there, Rabbi Yonatan. And finally, they say, there has never been and never will be an idolatrous city, because the Torah says, in an idolatrous city, in a city that has once been Jewish and has started following a radical departure and is now worshiping idols, you are supposed to not only put all the citizens to the sword, but burn everything that ever existed in that city. And the rabbis say, really? No one has a mezuzah that's going to then be like burning the name of God? Like, are you kidding? That has never happened. And this one guy's like, no, I've seen it. They're like, seriously, Rabbi Yonatan, just stay in your corner. Oh.
When they need to shift things a little bit.
Yeah, when they need to shift things. And I really do hope that there will come a time when they were like, there has never been and will never be a woman who is barred from entering rabbinical school. Yeah, I mean, I had a professor at Hebrew College who was talking about women rabbis as, you know, like, this is something that really couldn't have been thought of before, you know, the 1960s, 1970s. And I raised my hand. I was like, no, Regina Jonas, who was ordained in Berlin in the 1930s, wrote her dissertation 100 years ago. And that's not even counting the maid of Ludomir, who was acting as a rabbi, even though she couldn't be necessarily ordained, in the 1800s. And there's, you know, we now know that there were women who were rabbis in Persia and going further back and further back.
Go to your corner.
What?
Just go to your corner.
Right, exactly. Rabbi Yonatan, go.
What was the answer to that?
He shrugged. He didn't last long at Hebrew College. Not for that reason, but. So.
Is there a reason that, like, other than, like, the fasting, is there a reason that there's only one day of Yom Kippur, but there's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Because, I mean, Yom Kippur is supposed to be 10 days after Rosh Hashanah.
Right. So there is this question of, okay, if we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, why don't we have 2 days of Yom Kippur? Because if it's supposed to be 10 days after, then shouldn't it be like, okay, 10 days after the first day, 10 days after the second day, we're not sure, we're going to do it twice. Right? So what happened, there's a couple of reasons why. Aside from just the ordeal of fasting, Rosh Hashanah is the one holiday where Jews came back from the exile in Babylonia and said, you know what, we actually want to keep 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. All the other holidays, now that we're back in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, we're going to have the 7 days or the 1 day that we would have in Israel. But that one, they decided to keep. So since that was more for affection than for being unclear about when the year was starting, that one, they were like, okay, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, 1 day of Yom Kippur. And then when there were more Jews in the diaspora, we were like, no, we're just following the Israeli custom. But in a more serious way, there are rules about fast days falling adjacent to Shabbat. You can, because Shabbat is 25 hours and Yom Kippur is 25 hours, if you have a fast day next to Shabbat on either Friday or Sunday, then there's going to be an hour of Shabbat where you are punishing yourself and Shabbat will be violated. But if they totally, fully intersect, then you can say, okay, this particular Shabbat, we are doing something different. But there's only so much wiggle room in the calendar if, you know, it's like, okay, we've said that Yom Kippur cannot fall on Friday or on Sunday, but if it also can't fall on Thursday or on Monday, like, at what point does the calendar just become unworkable?
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, great question. Yeah, it reminds me, there's a midrash that from the creation of the world until the going out from Egypt, God was the one who kept the calendar. And when we finally went out from Egypt, we are told to keep a calendar starting from our preparations to go out from Egypt. And the midrash is that God said, you are now grown up enough to be partners with me and keep track of this for yourselves. You are now at a stage where you can figure things out on your own, which is a wonderful mark of adulthood to come up to that point. So, yeah, I think at this point we're ready to stop unless people have one more question. But wishing you a meaningful and gentle end of the fast of Yom Kippur, and we will continue with Mincha at 4:20.